Hey folks, unlike other carnivorous plants such as Sarracenia, Nepenthes, Dionea, or Drosera, the Pinguicula genus, or also known commonly as Butterworts, require some different growing media because they like less acidic soil than the other ones that are typically found in the market. Yet they are sold typically growing in just pure peat moss, and that does not promote their survival after you purchase them. So you could be giving them the right conditions, giving them distilled water or rainwater, and yet they are still dying on you. Well, I recently traded for a Pinguicula, the one on the right. The one on the left that's in that cup growing in sphagnum moss, I actually purchased for a couple bucks off someone. And anyway, so I traded for the ones on the right from someone on Facebook who knows how to grow them, and these were some she propagated. And I got them maybe a couple months ago, and they were only 2 months old, and they haven't grown that much more, but the way she had them, they grew fast because she knows how to fertilize them properly, etc. And these I've been keeping alive near a south-facing window in the garage, and I watered them yesterday. You can even see the water down here at the bottom. But they are basically easy to care for if you know how to make the right soil media. So I'm going to give y'all the recipe which she gave me, which is proved because that's what she implements, and she has such sheer success at growing them. So she provided me the recipe in units she referred to as part. And what's nice is when you describe things in parts, that means that you can easily scale up or scale down however you want. So for me, 1 part I am going to denote as 4 of these yogurt cups. And these are the Siggy's yogurt containers for whole milk. So this is going to equal 1 part. So then naturally 3/4 of a part, a half part, and a 1/4 of a part. So there are total of, let's see, 1, 2, 3.5 parts in volume total for this recipe, but it can really be 3 1/4 because a 1/4 part for one of the ingredients is optional. So now let's look at the ingredients. So the first thing you want to employ is 1 part peat. So that will be 4 yogurt cups in my scenario. You could do it as 4 cups if you're using a bigger amount, or shot glasses, just whatever you need based on the amount you need. I'm just using based on what I have, and it's a lot more than I'll need at the moment, but I'm making do with what I have. Then you want 3/4 of a part of pumice. So I found some finely ground pumice for horticultural use, and I'm actually going to slide these back a little bit so we have enough room in the frame to show you all that it entails. So then we have basically half a part or 2 pieces of perlite, and then we have 4 parts of sand. But we can't just rely on sand alone. You want silica sand, but it's not all created equally. So here we have 4 parts. So sliding these back again to make room. And I did mention another ingredient with a 1/4 of a part, so we'll get to that in a moment. But what you need with the sand is to make sure that it's going to be safe. You don't want something like beach sand, and sometimes place sand will have to be cleaned. So I found some stuff that's soil cover for interior houseplants. So it's basically sourced in the United States. And the first thing I'm going to do is test it out before I actually pour that sand in. So I'm pouring a little bit in a cup. And I'm going to add this to the rest. If you notice, the amount in here is not fully filled, so that will help add up to the total. And then I'm going to add a little bit of distilled water. And I actually need to add more distilled water. And you see how the water looked, or the sand looked a little colored and stuff. So now I have a TDS meter. So I'm going to see, let's turn it on. Oh good, I was worried the battery was dead. And then you're going to stick it in here. And when you look at it, it's all zero, it's inert. So it has nothing stuck on it or anything. So I can hold it, let go, swirl it around, and it is good and safe to use. So this is something you need to make sure you have, because if you have it over like 20 or 30 parts per million, and even that may be too much. But anyway, you really want to use a TDS meter. And I'm actually going to save this sand and the water because it can be used in my mix. So now we are going to show you the fifth ingredient. But before we do, let us mix these together and then we can add that, because that ingredient is optional and we want to make sure that it will be something that you may or may not want to use. And if you do, you can always add it later, or if you don't have it, you can still make the soil mix. So you can buy these tubs, and they come in 3 different sizes. I wanted the medium size, but I didn't find any this afternoon at the Dollar Tree. But nevertheless, I'm hoping that it will suffice. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the sand. But one of the first things I want to pour will be the perlite, because it's so small and dusty I can actually just stick my hand in there like that and dump it, so I don't have to shake off all this dust into the room and breathe that nasty stuff. You know, you don't want to do this prolonged and develop silicosis. So I have the perlite. Next I'm going to add the peat moss, because the peat moss will help with shielding anything. And then these cups will have to be washed unless I reuse them. So 1.5 parts actually takes up almost half the container. So we still have another 1.5 and potentially more with the other ingredient. You really don't want to fill up the container all the way to the top, because the issue with that is you end up not being able to shake it all easily. So now we'll add the sand. And this sand is really nice because it is not creating all this dust when I pour it. It just pours really nicely. I like it. Now, one thing I should have done before I poured the sand is to test the sand I dissolved one more time, just to be safe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So make sure it's turned on. And we have this here and that there. You can see the different layers or strata. It's inert. So even after sitting for a few minutes and shaking this up, it's inert. So we are GTG, also known as good to go. So with that, I'm going to seal the lid on here and start shaking this up. Make sure it's sealed tight. And we have it mixed. good to give an extra shake just to make sure it mixed well. And you can see it finally mixed better. So we have this mix we made, and it is pretty inert in that it doesn't really have any fertilizer, but it's not inert in the fact that there are some biological components because of the peat moss. And we have the sand, so then we have this other ingredient which we're only putting a quarter of a part. And this is essentially stratum made by Fluval, known as Fluval stratum. And it's an optional fertilizer for the soil that you can put, or the growing media, that is safe for pinguiculas. So I'm actually going to add this in because, fertilizing carnivorous plants without using insects or letting it catch on its own is not for the novice carnivorous plant enthusiast. It's basically something that someone more skilled would be wanting to use, because you can give it too much fertilizer or the wrong kind and it's dead because they grow in very low fertile soils. So consequently, knowing that you put just a little bit of this was really good because it helps me fertilize the Butterworts so they can grow better. So I'm going to put this back up like that and shake. I'm going to check it out. It looked like it mixed pretty well. So I'm going to add the sand. And the peat moss will absorb all the excess moisture, so hopefully it will still be good to use. But I'm going to rinse some more of the sand. So I have this. I have that. I'm going to add it through here. Swirl and dump. Swirl and dump. And swirl and dump, or just dump in that case. A little bit more sand. There. Add this to my pile that I'm going to clean. So the fact that the peat moss was really dry helps where I can mix this without it getting too messy. Also helps me shake and lose some belly fat. Okay, we'll check it one more time. And it worked out really well. So now we can plant the pinguicula. I hope you enjoyed this video on a good recipe for growing Butterworts. And I hope you're inspired, and I hope it works out for you. Thanks for watching, and happy planting.